There's money everywhere. I made more in crypto than I would have made my whole life as an executive at
Oh,
a
sure.
bank, a VP.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not natural. It's the greatest time in human history to build wealth for your family.
Welcome back to Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, Chaz Wolfe. Today we have Coach JV, Mr. John Vasquez, former banking VP turned founder of the 3T Warrior Academy, where he has helped thousands of people achieve freedom, mindset, health, and wealth. He's also a leader in the crypto space and a powerhouse content creator with over 2 million followers. Today, here are the three things that we discuss. Coach JV gives us his exact strategy for generational wealth.
We went from broke on the parents' couch to coming up on 3 7-figure ecosystems. And I have a Rockefeller Trust set up. My family for generations is set up.
He breaks down macroeconomics and how the middle class is in trouble.
The average middle class American has to make $160,000 a year to be middle class now.
We also talk about the Bitcoin halving and all things crypto.
My strategy in cryptocurrency. When everybody's excited and getting in, I've already sold 4 times on the way up.
Enjoy the show. Coach JV, my man, how we doing? Welcome to the King stage.
Thank you, brother. Such an honor to be here. I appreciate you, man.
Dude, I was just telling you, that sometimes, you go back and forth on social media and you see people, guys, gals, whatever, and you came up on my feed a long time ago, maybe even a couple of years ago. And always loved the beard, but definitely appreciate your mindset, especially when it comes to finances and mindset. And so we're going to jump into a bunch of stuff because, dude, you got a message.
Yes. Very excited to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let's jump off here. Tell the listeners kind of what you're known for. I know you're kind of known for several things and you've got several businesses, but kind of just who's Coach JV?
Yeah. So Coach Shay, I think I'm most well known for macroeconomics and cryptocurrency education around financial literacy. And so Coach JV is a guy who has gotten the crap kicked out of him over and over again. And finally, in 2020, I just drew a line in the sand. I was like, enough is enough. And there was no wealth in my family, a lot of bad behaviors in my family, a lot of things that I seem to be passing down to my kids in 2020 when the pandemic hit. I think that was the last straw for me. We had finally gotten our shit together. We finally built a business. All the stuff you're supposed to do as an entrepreneur, the 19-hour days, the grind culture. And I finally, I went through Alex Hormozi's gym launch program and our gym exploded. It was absolutely amazing. It was such an honor to coach with him at that level, now where he's at now. But I coached with this gym launch and he taught me a lot of really amazing skills. And we finally had it, man. Then this pandemic came and shut us down and something shifted in me there. I was like, you know what? I ended up broke on my parents' couch in 2020,
Wow.
which is pretty embarrassing for, a man with 2 children, disrupted my daughter's high school life. We had to move back in grandma and grandpa, 1,000 square foot home. And I just remember sitting there in my parents' backyard. It's a house I grew up in, man. It's exactly the same. Nothing has changed. My feet are on the same carpet my son's feet were on.
Wow.
And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, there's something to this. There's a reason why this happened to me. And I started to listen to their conversations around money. I started to listen to watch how they reacted to money, how they reacted to the news. And I'm like, you know what? If I don't fix something now, if I don't draw a line in the sand, my kids are going to repeat the exact same process. So in 2020, I drew a line in the sand. I became more committed to the pain of change and staying the same. But I realized I had to completely rewire my brain. And from there, it went from there to my daughter introduced us to TikTok. We had, I was known for my mindset, subconscious mind programming, goal setting, things like that.
Yeah.
But when my daughter introduced us TikTok, I was like, oh, it's for dancing kids. And we actually started using it to build our relationship when we moved back with my parents. And I saw this platform that people were really responding to. And so I started sharing. So as I was learning, I was sharing with people, the public, and it just went completely viral. And a lot of people say it was overnight success, but by then, since 2017, on all our social media platforms, we had posted already 35,000 times without ever going viral. And so people were like, oh, it was overnight success if you call 4 years, 35,000 posts. And then finally, I don't remember, me and my daughter were talking about this. We're in my parents' house, we're heading to bed. We did a video and it just started 10,000 views, 20,000 views. And
Wow.
it was neat. It was a cool experience for us to experience. And we always give credit to my daughter, Raven, for getting us there. And then I found that, everything is for me as God and following Christ. And it was a tug. It was like this tug towards, you need to keep just being authentic and sharing exactly what you're doing, with the fear of being embarrassed and judged throughout the whole process. I was made fun of, I was ridiculed. And now we're in a totally different position financially, spiritually, mentally, not on my parents' couch anymore. So that's a good news.
Yeah. I mean, millions of followers. The overnight success obviously has culminated in your crushing it. But you said in there, there's several pieces that stacked on top of each other. What do you think, looking back at that story, and then we're going to dive into kind of how you think about the economy. There's some stuff that just
Yeah,
happened this past weekend that I think we could talk
yeah.
about, but there were several stacks there. What do you think the
Mhm.
most pivotable step in that stack was that
Yeah.
really lit things up? Was it the actual virality, or was it other things in your business, in your mind?
Yeah, it was just the commitment to myself finally. It was like, you know what? I truly stopped worrying about other people. Now I say this, I care what my parents think, I think care what my kids think. People I love, I truly care. But I stopped worrying about what how other people saw me or judge me. And I started to really look at myself as a man. I'm like, all I did was say, "Did you move the needle forward today?" That's what I asked myself. I'm like, "Do you know what you need to do to get your family out of the situation? Did you move the needle forward?" It doesn't matter what this person says on social or this person says about your journey, or when you say you're gonna build a seven-figure ecosystem, people laugh at you and make fun of you. It was really the drawing the line in the sand. It was like I became committed to change. It was like every single day. So I created, my workout patterns, my studying patterns, how I spent time with my kids. I talked about being a freedom warrior, right? But was I really free? I could barely pay my bills. I couldn't even spend time with my kids. And so I devoted my life to becoming a freedom warrior. And so freedom for me is freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom to be with my family and raise my kids. And that was something I devoted my life to. Now, was the journey easy? Absolutely not. But it was that drawing the line in the sand. I mean, I call it the Grand Canyon, man. I was on the other side of the Grand Canyon and I was not going back. It was like we burned all the boats and we went forward. And it was pretty neat because I was really worried that, I was gonna leave a lot of people behind, but most people became it was a mirror effect. It was like as I was leveling up, and when I stopped worrying about what they were saying or judging me, I just kept moving forward, and the opposite happened. A lot of them mirror reflected me and started getting their shit together. So the people around me, we all started to mirror each other, and we all started to encourage each other and lift each other up and celebrate each other. Now there was some that completely have fallen off, and
Sure.
I've said, "You're so different." When they say that to me, I'm like, "Thank God."
Yes.
4 or 5 years ago, I was a broken little boy that was manipulated by people, didn't have my shit together, right? Couldn't look in the mirror and truly be like, "Hey, I love you, JV." And so that was it, man, when I drew the line in the sand. But I think for me, what I really wanna say about that is I had to rewire my subconscious mind, man. Some stuff happened to me as a child that shouldn't happen to a child, and I was holding that deep-rooted subconscious mind programming. I didn't feel worthy as a child, I didn't feel worth it. I did a lot of really not good things in my there's a little bit deeper past to me. In December 18th, 2006, I committed suicide due to a massive opiate addiction. And I say committed suicide because that guy died, he's done. And it was
Wow.
due to I blame nobody in the world, I take full responsibility, but it was due to my low frequency, my low energy, my low
Yeah.
self-esteem, not being able to taught how to be a man or even handle my issues. And so the subconscious reprogramming was the biggest thing. So I've been devoted to that since 2020. Now we're sitting in 2024. It's going asking myself why. Like, why do I believe what I believe?
Yeah.
Spiritually, mentally, physically. Why didn't I believe in myself? Why didn't I believe that I was man enough to take care of my family? And I had to go all the way down to when I was a kid. The things that I learned as a child. And so I took that not only into my personal life, my spiritual life, but also my financial life. Like everything I had learned came from when I was a child.
Yeah.
And so I had to identify what it was, dig deep, get down to the origin, and then once I found the origin, uproot it and then replace it with something new. So that was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. I want to get into that because training the subconscious, rewiring the subconscious has been
Mm,
a deep part of a lot of what I've done for myself and for others even. And so I think we're going to have a little root there, but you said I've been committed to the pain of change more than the staying the same or complacency.
yes,
Does
yes.
does change always have to be painful, Coach JV?
That's what everybody identifies it with, but for me, it's become exciting to me. Like, at first, it did feel painful, to be honest, at first, because
Yeah.
I think anytime we try to do something that we're not familiar with, there's so many things that come with that. It's the fear of rejection,
Yeah.
the fear of not being enough once you get there. So there's a lot of pain in that, and there's a lot of pain in people judging you,
Yeah.
right? "You're so different, JV." Like I said, thank God, and so there's a lot of pain to that. I think when someone first starts, it's more it feels better to just stay the same until you start changing,
Yeah.
right? And then you look back and it's like, because there's going to be pain either way, whether it's your health, like say you're not taking care of yourself, right? Well, there's going to be a delay effect to that for your
Right.
health.
Yep.
There's going to be some sort of pain. But do I like being on the stair mill every single morning? Do I like getting like I did the 300 workout this morning? My trainer whooped it was painful the whole workout.
That's
But when
right.
I walked out, I'm like, yes, I've never regretted the pain of change, but I've always regretted the pain of staying the same.
Yeah, so good, man. And I think that you're right. I think that fear is what possibly holds us back from
Mm,
the desire for change. because I think a lot of people maybe say that they want to change, but then when it comes to that actual like, this is what it's going to take, hands off, fear takes over. I don't want it that bad in essence, right? And that may not even be like a conscious choice. It may just be you and me previous going, I just I'm just gonna be average, or I'm gonna be like this. And I don't even know why I'm doing this, but somewhere down deep in there, we've created these tracks that we just keep going down over and over and over, right?
Yes. Yeah, oh, yeah, and it's like, I think also too because you have to give up something to become something,
Yeah.
and that's scary. It's scary to give up things, your old self. And often we're addicted to our old self, and like you said too, I don't believe we come here to repeat consciousness. I believe God brought us here to expand consciousness, and I believe that's the trap. The devil is the prince of the earth, as Jesus said, and if he can keep you trapped in a cycle of repetitive behaviors over and over again. And as soon as you start to believe in yourself, boom, he taps into yourself. No, no, JV, remember when you were a little kid, they told you weren't worth it. You never started on the football team. You never got the girl, And so those things still, I get chills when I talk about it. Those things still come up. The more success we gain, and success is defined totally different to me, other than 4 years ago, it's totally different now for me. But I still have that little boy tapping on me, man. And to me, it represents the darkest side of myself that I need to master to turn back into the light. And it's about really looking myself in the mirror and saying, "Hey, JV, little JV, it's okay, man. We got this. Like what those people said to you was not true. I'm going to let you feel that for a second, but what are we going to do to ascend back to the light?" And that's a little process I do. People might think I'm crazy. I do that every day. And now, I have a 19-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. I'm trying to get emotional talking about. Well, with my daughter's amazing. She's an adult now. My son, it's like I'm training a little warrior, man. It's like
Yeah.
I am embodying into that child that he is worthy, that he doesn't have to make me proud. He needs to make God proud and Christ proud. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful because I'm like, "What are you?" He's like, "I'm a warrior. I'm a champion." He's like, "I'm rich," but it has nothing to do with financial. It's an embodiment. So I believe that we fear giving up something. I think we all fear that.
Yeah. How do you think? I've got a 4-year-old son. He's about to turn 5 here next month, and when I think about a warrior, I mean, I didn't know my dad growing up. He didn't know I existed. So you want to talk
Oh,
about
wow.
some deep stuff. But I now have a son. I've met my dad since then. I've changed my last name. My dad and I have a great relationship. It's been pretty cool story. But now I have a son. He now has my name, which is my dad's name. And he's been shooting his bow for probably close to a year, and he's
Yeah.
4, like, talk about
Awesome.
being a warrior, like, seeing a little kid out there
Yes.
just for hours
Yes.
on end, it's like, "Whoa, this is cool." And so, with you and your son, of course, with you and your daughter, and with me and my daughters as well, but since you kinda brought up the son aspect and the warrior, how are you implementing with him to be able to act with no fear, or to be able to see
Yeah.
fear and press into it as opposed to letting it, you know, steer us in different directions? What are you doing with him
Yeah. That's
specifically?
That's beautiful, and I'll talk about my daughter as well with that is, so my son specifically is really being there at his level. So what I do with my son, for example, like if he gets hurt, right? So my dad, when I would get hurt before, I was like, "Get up," blah, blah, blah. There was no nurturing at all. So I get down to his level, I look him in the eyes, I said, "Are you hurt or are you scared?" And he'll say, "Both." And if he's hurt and scared, we manage what's hurt, and then we, nurture him a little to be scared. Then when we get back up, like, "We're gonna do it again, okay?" He's like, "All right, so I'm gonna do it with you, son. We're gonna do this together. We're gonna fail together. How does that sound?" And so just constantly reinforcing that, hey, what he did, the failure is not a failure. It's a step towards the next goal. I've also really encouraged him to stand up for who he is, like as my son. And it makes me smile tremendously, both my daughter and my son, because it's like I never got this type of coaching. My dad's a great human being. He provided for our family. Just he never provided this type of leadership for me. Never. He wasn't really around when I was a kid. Good provider. Did everything he did. He did what his dad taught him to do. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And so never told me he loved me. Never. And so those are all the things that I do with my son. But I also let my son know too that we're going to fail forward. Like a 100% chance that you're going to fail, son. I said, that's a guarantee I'll give you in life. They tell you you got to pay your taxes and you're going to die, right? You also are going to fail, especially if you're going to become an entrepreneur, right?
yeah, that's right.
And I also allow him too, as he's transitioning from subconscious, he turned 8. So now he's becoming conscious, right? He's getting
That's
a
right.
conscious mind.
Yeah.
And so now he's asking tons of questions. And I remember as a child, they'd be like, that's the way it is. I'm like, we go deep into the question.
Yes.
Dad, why is it this way? Well, let's talk about it. Why do you think it's that way? He has more insight than I do usually because he's closer to source. And I'm like, that's a really good insight. I'll give you an example. The Super Bowl. He said, "Dad, who do you believe is going to win the Super Bowl?" And I just messed with him. I think God is my present CEO. That's who I think is going to win the Super Bowl. And he goes, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, Dad, God is in everything." And I said, "Well, explain to me." And he started talking through it. It was actually on one of my stories. It was just, I had to, he was like, he's in the blade of grass. He's you." And he just started and I'm like, "That's it." I'm like, "You are a what?" Just yeah, just by asking questions and letting him express himself instead of being like,
Yeah.
"No, this is the way it is," because I don't know anything, man. And I'm starting to realize by not knowing anything, it's making me the smartest man in the world. And he's one of my greatest teachers. And for my daughter specifically, she's such a lady, man. She's so classy. She's a beast. She's become like because my daughter went through, and I hold a lot of guilt for this. And we've worked through forgiveness together on this. I was a drug addict, an opiate addict from birth all the way to about 4 years old. So my son is growing up in a completely different paradigm, and she's mature enough where she's forgiven me for it. But it's so interesting. This is to all the parents out there. They did a little document. It didn't go anywhere, but they did like this documentary, and they interviewed her. And I was standing outside listening. She didn't want me in the room, and she was like, "Oh man, when I was a drug addict, like, I felt so much guilt for it, man." And my daughter said, she goes, "I still saw him as a superhero."
Yeah.
I had no idea my dad was a drug addict. I was still there, present, but I was high on drugs. And then she also said too, like, the man I am today, who people see as a fool, like, you see me train. I left banking in 2017, had the suit. I mean, what looks like the American dream, right? I was miserable, brother,
Yeah.
miserable. She
Yeah.
said, "My dad was miserable as a banker, and who my dad is today, I'm proud of him." And I was like, wow, man. So I say that because with my daughter, what I do is every month I take my daughter on a date. I take her to a really nice restaurant, and I show her how a man should treat a woman, how divine masculine should show up in divine feminine. And these are things that I never was taught by my father. And so these are things that I feel that we're here to shift the generation. That's what I really feel. So I'm trying to embody in them the things that I didn't learn, not saying that I have it right, but I'm trying to do the best I can so that when my daughter and my son have a child, that we can shift the generation. And that's what I mean
Yeah.
by drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah. That's good, man. Yeah. The intentionality obviously is where it all breaks down. The little moments that you have with these children, and of course, I'm sure that you've carried that into all areas of your life. I
Yeah,
know that you
thank you.
have through your discipline and stuff, but it's fun to be able to hear, especially as parents who are entrepreneurs. I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of them out there that they I mean, I don't want to be that dad, right?
Mhm.
The dad that we probably had, or in my case, I didn't have. And so being able to kind of go all in on dadhood, or even being a
Yeah.
good husband or whatever, like we have with our businesses, because that's
Yeah.
just an easier, like we can be obsessed, we can go all in on the money, but sometimes it's a little harder to really, like you said, kind of settle down in that moment, look him in the eyes, and really be
Yes.
who he needs you to be. What do you think? What do you think for right now? The entrepreneur listening to right,
Yeah.
to you, and it's like, man, like that's really powerful what he does with his son and with his daughter. And I don't, I want to do that, but I don't know what the first step is. What would you say,
Mm.
like super practical for the listener to go do to work towards that?
Yeah. The first thing I did was define principles. I read Ray Dalio's book called Principles. Like, I love Ray Dalio, the one of my favorite economists. But he has a book called Principles, and so this changed my life, literally changed my life. So I define principles within my business and personally, and I live by those principles because I always say if you don't believe in something, you're going to fall for everything, right? And I noticed that in entrepreneurship, often we see the grind culture, right? We're supposed to grind 19 hours a day. We can talk about that as well. You shouldn't be grinding 19 hours a day. You should scale your business because we got into business for freedom, right? So the first is I define principles for business. It's integrity, honesty, and uncompromising belief in God. So any business that I create, I have to be able to openly and freely speak about my relationship with God and Jesus Christ. My CFO is a Buddhist. You can come as you are in our business because in corporate America, you can speak about politics or religion. In mine, you can talk about whatever you believe in. We say what you mean, don't say it mean. So from there, all my decisions are made based on my principles. Then we go over to personal is peace, freedom, and family structure. If anything disrupts my peace, freedom, or family structure, it's a hard no. I don't care if someone offers me a $10 million contract, a $1 billion contract. If it disrupts my peace, my freedom to be with my children, I'm off at 2 o'clock every single day, or my family structure, it's a hard no. And my kids see that.
Yeah.
They see that. They see that I'm devoted to so I get off at 2 every day. I'm raising my son. His mom's super amazing mom. She's involved. We're both raising her, right? We're not
Yeah.
together, but we're both properly raising him the best we can, being apart. And I made a commitment that I will be there for my children. And so the next step for that was once I did that and made those commitments, all my decisions in business, personally and professionally, are all based on my principles. And I let my kids know what the principles are. And so they know that. And my team knows that too. We launched a new company and they said, "Hey, you got to be on these meetings at 5." I said, "That's against my principles. I'll release my equity." And they were like, "No, no, 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 we're good." And I'm like, "But that's how sincere or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
serious you have to be about your principles." So once you define that, it seems like I call it God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, seems to guide you to the right opportunities. Because what does freedom mean, right? Freedom for me is freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom to be with my family. Well, I need resources for that. I
Yeah.
need income for that. So it's very clear. Like when I close my eyes, I can picture our future. And then from there, I reverse engineer everything back to my principles and the activities based on the principles.
Yeah, I love it. Intentionality with a capital intentionality.
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
Okay, well, so there's a lot to unpack here, but I want to definitely get to the economics part of just your mind and what's
Yeah.
going on in today's world. Ray Dalio, obviously, as you described, that I mean, maybe we just start with that because
Yes.
some of the stuff he's talked about for years is like in the midst of being
Boom.
like literally happening now. You've been talking about stuff for 4+ years now. That things are happening in our economy, things are happening in crypto, things
Yep.
are happening across the world. Why don't we just like pause and just give you
Yeah.
like a 30-second just intro to economics with Coach JV?
Love it. Yes. First of all, I'm saying 99% of this is coming from Ray Dalio. 1% is coming from my own research. I'll say with Ray Dalio, he's amazing. So, like he shared with us, we're in a climate change narrative, a war narrative, social geopolitical narrative, and a financial narrative. It's never had all four at the exact same time. America's sitting at 120% debt to income ratio. We have more debt than we have income. The average middle class American has to make $160,000 a year to be middle class now, right? America has to borrow for pay for critical services, our critical services, and we're in the most historical presidential election in human history. Also in 2023, the bond yields inverted, which sucked all the liquidity out of the banks, and the regional banks are in a very tough position right now. So now we're sitting here, and then this happened this last weekend, which October kind of kicked it off last year, and then now this weekend was historical. Everything happening right now is a historical pattern that happens. It's nothing new under the sun. It happens over and over again in human history. And I'm not trying to be non-emotional about the war. I do not support war. I don't support anything going on. I'm all about love and kindness and stuff like that. What I'm saying is, if you understand how these waves of energy happen, it's the greatest time in human history to build wealth for your family, to get them out of that just over broke paradigm. So we've studied the waves of energy by studying Ray Dalio and understanding where we're heading in the economy. There's going to be everything's going to shift in the economy, right? The way that the American dollar is showing up, the way that money moves through the system, the way that people invest, cryptocurrency, blockchain, AI technology. And so the middle class really has to wake up that there's an opportunity for them to get involved, Main Street involved in Wall Street. That's why they flooded us out of crypto. And there's another part of it too that like we got to get our shit together, man, specifically in America. So that's a Reader's Digest version of where we're
Yeah.
at in America right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's break some of this down because you said you kind of ended there with we got to get personally we got to get right. So
Mhm.
let's use that as a caveat here because we just kind of
Yeah.
came out of some of the personal stuff. What do you mean
Mhm.
that we got to get right like singularly first? You talking about internal? You talking about my mind? You talking about my bank
Great.
account? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so I call it the 5 pre framework. First is foundational, right? So foundation is what I talked about. You have to discover where did you learn about money? What is your belief system around money? So my parents would say money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah, it does. It's paper, right? I didn't realize that money is just debt. I didn't even know that, but
Yep.
I had to rewire. First, you have to rewire your belief system around money, and
Yep.
you have to go deep and to find out how did your parents speak about money? Were your grandparents wealthy? Were your parents wealthy? Did they talk about investing, or they say go to school, get a job, get a 401k? But going to school, getting a job, getting a 401k, that's a strategy of hope. You're hoping that the market is going to be in alignment when you retire.
Yep.
That doesn't sound like retirement to me or planning, right? So we never take the time to learn. Step two is financial literacy. You have to understand what is a bank? How does a bank work? How do they make money? Interest income, fee income, and capital markets income. What happens to your money when it goes into a bank? They lend it out to the next person walking in, right? We have to understand that money is debt. So my income is your debt is my income. There is no money in the system. So we have to understand also that from 1913, the financial literacy, since the Federal Reserve was created, the US dollar's collapsed 99%, right? So now, we rewire the foundation, we develop financial literacy, we know what money is. Then we have to start to learn how to become disciplined, budgeting, right? Looking at, do I really need this or do I want this, right? And really changing our frame of mind. Then the next step we teach people is how to create income. How do you create income? Well, maybe you're not an entrepreneur and you want to have a job, but you should always pay yourself first. When you pay yourself, where should you pay yourself, right? So you have crypto, you have stocks. Everybody's telling you the next best thing. And after you learn to earn, this is the key, is you have to learn how to protect, compound, and grow. And so those are the steps that we've gone through, and it's radically changed our lives. We went from broke on the parents' couch to, three coming up on three seven-figure ecosystems, and I have a Rockefeller Trust set up. My family for generations is set up. It's because that it was that deep commitment to change. It was like it's not that difficult once you get into it. It's a very simple strategy. You got cryptocurrency that's going to go parabolic on the straight up on the back end of this year. But what goes up must come down really hard. And we always say, buy the rumors, sell the news. When the news is telling you to get in, you should have been out days ago, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's an element here that you went through fast there. I want to come back because I've actually taught this exact formula even to kids
Yep.
in schools,
Yep.
which is, we typically go to work, you spend your time, that equals
Mhm.
money, and then we spend it. And so I
Yep.
draw it out on the board for the kids, and they all understand, like, yes, that's how money works. Okay, cool.
Right.
And so
Yep.
what if at the end of the month you don't have any more money, and what do you
Ooh.
have to do now? We have to go back to work. Same equation. Time equals money, spend it all on the stuff. Okay, got
Yep.
it. But what you've suggested, which is the same thing that I help the kids understand, this is
Mhm.
not like a well-known thing, even with adults. So I want to
Mhm.
press into this.
Yes.
You're basically suggesting, like, when I earn, before I spend, I'm asking myself some questions here. Do I need it? Do I
Yes.
want it? I love that. But with those funds, I'm going to, instead of sending it over to spend, I'm going to push it down or up into an investment first. Let that
Always.
investment pay me and then pay for my stuff. Give us a
Yes.
little Coach JV here.
Always. Always pay yourself first every single time. So Wednesdays and Friday, I get paid dividends into my freedom for my companies. It's a ritual. I wake up, I'm like, boom, we got to move the money. It has to move. I have to pay myself first. So the reason, because when you start to pay yourself first, it eliminates any frivolous spending. It's out, right? Because what happens if you don't pay yourself first, then it gets in the account, you pay your bills, and then what's left? You're always the last on the totem pole.
Yeah.
You have to flip it. You have to flip it. Also, the energy behind money, this is something a lot of people don't talk about, is money is just a frequency. It's currency. So if you are the last on the totem pole, guess what money thinks? I'm always going to pay you last. I'm always going to take care of you last. But money is a resource, it's a currency. So when you're investors, people who save and invest, they actually make more money. It's a conscious effort. So when you're putting money in, it's like you think differently about money. So when you go to spend your money or go to buy a new pair of Jordans or whatever people purchase, they're like, wait a minute, that's $160. I could put that into a token right now and get 5,000 coins, whatever it is, right? So paying yourself first not only changes your frame of mind, but it also reduces it reduces your ability to spend on things that you don't need. Also, another thing is too, you realize that you have to budget. People are spending way too much money now. It's kind of tough environment saying that right now because a lot's changed in 24 months, right? Inflation, I get it. There's some dual family homes right now. They can't even buy groceries. So I'm cautious saying that. I get that. I totally get that. Okay. So if you have two cars as a family, a husband and wife, can you go down to one? Can you do public transportation? Can you get rid of both cars and drive a hoopty for a while? Maybe you mess I mean, I hate saying this, but like maybe you need to mess up your credit a little bit to start saving a little bit. I mean, I know that's you have to get out of all this. The American dream is dead. This
Yeah.
borrowing against your future self, a 72-month for a loan for a car, right? Which is a liability. And that's what I teach my son, my daughter, liabilities and assets, right? Every vehicle I drive is paid for by a company or an asset. Right. And so we have to really reframe that for people because it's the first thing I hear. Well, I don't have any money to invest. Everybody does. So let me just tell you a personal story. So I was broke on my parents' couch. They shut our business down. Our business was all encompassed. Everything was inside of a facility here. So it's physical. So the gym part, they made us shut our whole business down because of the pandemic. So it shut down our whole ecosystem.
Yep.
I was like, okay, so my revenue went from to zero basically, right? So I was investing in crypto. So I was like, okay, I have no income coming in. So Gary Vay, he had this $20,000 flip challenge or whatever. So I was like, I'm going to do this. So I started going on Facebook Marketplace. I
Wow.
got a vacuum. I flipped a vacuum. He made $10. I put it into XRP. I flipped a couch. I cleaned it up, made $100. I'm like, there's money everywhere. Someone wanted their yard clean. I went and cleaned their yard and made $20, $30. I went from nothing to $10,000 in crypto, then went to the bull run and I just kept repeating. So when people tell me there's no money, I literally come hang out with me for a day and I'll show you there's money everywhere.
Oh yeah.
It's because we've been trained to think that it's just this it's trading time for money.
Yeah.
If you're trading time for money, you'll always be in the rat race. Warren Buffett says, in order to become wealthy, you have to make money while you sleep. So people have to you have to buckle down for a while. I mean, I've been buckled down this is year 4 and 4 years of just going all in and paying myself first. Now I'm starting to head into, I call it the generational wealth cycle. Now I'm in an asset bubble. Now I'm like, Now every move I make is putting into assets. If I want to buy something, I borrow from the asset to buy a liability, right? And so, and I got there because another place that's really cool is a library. It's free. I had a library card and I read every book I could on wealth, and I was like, "Oh, it's all right here."
Yep.
Right? And then, then I started spending money on mentorships, Alex Hormozi, all these different people, and I'm like, "Wow,
Yeah.
okay." So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. That's a big first thing I get, well, I don't have the money to invest. Everybody, there's money everywhere.
Yep, that's right. You've mentioned books. Before we hit the record button, you'd kind of slided a little title in there that I also find very fond.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the principles that you've mentioned here come
Yep.
from The Richest Man in Babylon. So talk
Yes.
about the principles in this book. I mean, they're basically what you've been saying, but any highlight to the book and anything that the listener could get out of that what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah, Richest Man in Babylon. Simplistically, it's kind of a harder book to read if it's like you got to really digest it. So basically, every time if you get $10, you make $10, you want to birth a brother or sister from that $10, right? So for me, like that's my strategy in cryptocurrency. When everybody's excited and getting in, I've already sold 4 times on the way up. When I pull, I don't go buy Lambos and Ferraris. I go take that money and I secure my money and I secure it in things that I can actually borrow against. So now I've taken $10. Say I made $10 in the crypto market. I take out 50% profit. I put the $5 into, I use insurance investments, insure my money. Then I borrow against OPM, the insurance cash value. And now I've made money 3 ways. So that
Mhm.
$10 that went into crypto now made me five. I put into insurance product and I can borrow maybe 90% of the cash value. Then I go buy a cash generating asset. Now it's four. So every time you get money, that's what the banks do. It's the exact same thing the banks do. Mrs. Jones puts in her $10. They lend it out to the next person walking in, $9. That $9 gets lent to the next person, or $8. And her money now changed hands 9 times without no new money creation.
Wow.
That's why I tell people you have to understand what money is called fractional reserves, right? And I think in
Mhm.
a checking account now it's zero. They can lend out 100% of your money. So everything we buy or everything I think it was Grant Cardone that said, he said, wealthy people buy stuff or get credit that the working poor buy, and working poor get credit that makes the wealthy wealthier, right? So
Sure. Yep.
debt is a tool. It's an instrument too. Cause I'm kind of a mix of all these different, right? So I'm not big on credit card debt and things like that. Any debt that I have is actually generating income, if that makes sense.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Yeah. I think that's a wise move. I mean, the principle of just taking money first, paying yourself first.
Yep.
The
Yep.
book talks about a 10% going into your purse, and
Mhm.
and then the purse gets big enough to then you make an investment. And
Mhm.
so whether it's in crypto, whether it's in real estate, I've done this multiple times over. In fact, I'm in the middle of one of these little purse builds
Yeah.
where what you just said is like, okay, I sold my truck to one of my companies, and I have not had a car in almost a year. I've had a couple
Mhm.
buddies that be like,
Same.
"Wait, what?" I mean,
Yeah.
I could go buy pretty much any car I wanted to. And they're like, "Wait a second, you don't have a car?" I was like, "Well, first off, I don't go anywhere. Like, I run all of my
Yeah.
companies right here. And
Yes.
I spend my time with my family here, my wife's here. Every now and then I might go a couple places and I use my wife's vehicle. So what first off, why do I need one? That's just me being an essentialist.
Sure.
Number
Yep.
two is there's this if you compound that $100,000
Yep.
in the initial investment over the course of not only just my 50 years of that investment, whatever that's going to be, crypto or
Yep.
real estate or whatever, but then it gets passed on to my children and my grandchildren. We're
Yes.
talking millions of dollars
Yeah.
that I'm deciding on a vehicle. It's like, I think I'll go with the millions for now.
Yeah, and then when you start to understand entrepreneurship, for example, I could either give a certain amount to Biden taxes, or I could have bought the car I just bought and got with the tax code. I don't know
Right.
which tax code it is. I think it's
179.
179. Yep. So basically, I was able to write off a crap to buy a really cool car, 6,000 pounds. I'm like, either I give it to them. So now we're like, okay, so how can we mitigate tax burdens, right? So now we just create a C corp. So and the game is designed when I look at it, it's designed for us to put money into the economy, right? Because if I am I either going to give that much to the tax people, or I go buy a car that there's a person working at the dealership, there's a person that built the dealership, there's a person who builds the tires. So I always look at it as people get so caught up in taxes. It's like I'm able to put money back into the economy. Now I wish I could have kept that amount, but
Yeah.
when you start to learn the game, it's like the game is not rigged against you. It's rigged for you to win, to be an entrepreneur, to create money, to be an investor,
Yeah.
right? But I also caution people in these economic times right now, like especially if you're getting into crypto, man. It's like it's so speculative, and you have to have an exit plan. I tell every person getting into crypto, you have to have an exit plan because it's unrealistic. From 2020 to 2022, I made more in crypto than I would have made my whole life as an executive
Oh,
at a
sure.
bank, a VP.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not, and I was like, this is not natural. Get
Yep.
your money out. And that's what made us, rich. And
That's
now we're
right.
heading into wealth. I was like, because I pulled profits.
Yep.
And then 2022, I can't, it seemed like it was overnight, but I remember I woke up and my portfolio was down. The 50% I kept was down 85%. And I was like, this is completely unnatural. Then we got really strict with our investments, right? So we do ladders on the way out. So if people are getting into crypto, be very cautious. Have a game plan,
Yep.
right? Don't mortgage these people, like some influencers are teaching people to like do a loan on your credit card and give. I'm like, don't play games with credit. To like, if you don't know how to use credit to make more money like that, I wouldn't play games with that. I just wanted to put that caveat out there. I
Yeah.
do use cryptocurrency. I've gotten very wealthy off of it, but
Yeah.
you have to have a solid game plan and good people around you as well.
Yeah, let's keep the train going on the crypto. We've got the Bitcoin halving coming up here in 5 days. I know you talk a lot about
Yep.
that in your content. How does that affect crypto?
Yeah.
How does that affect our economy? What do you say?
Yeah. So just to start with Bitcoin specifically, so you have Bitcoin, then you have alternative coins. So everything outside of Bitcoin is an altcoin, right? So Bitcoin is the driver of the market. It was created in 2019 by some pseudonymous person, Satoshi Nakamoto, which is pretty wild. But every 4 years, they go through what's called a Bitcoin halving. So it creates a supply and demand issue. So this Saturday on the 20th, the supply is going to get cut in half that can be mined. So what's wild about this asset too is that 80% of the supply has not moved. That's completely unnatural with an investment. Number two is there's a fixed supply. No more of it can be printed, right?
Right.
And then every 4 years, the supply decreases.
Yeah, it gets harder.
Also, yes, and it's doing something crazy. It's a risk on and risk off asset. So when there's high risk, people are going into it. And when there's low risk, people are going into it. So it's like nothing we've ever experienced before. So what happens is the Bitcoin having organically, it's like there'll be a little bit with the war narrative, though, that pulled back crypto because that organically happens, right? So there'll be probably a little pullback this week. The Bitcoin having to happen in about 90 days. I remember it was like October, I think it was August, September, October in 2020 when it started going straight up. Crypto will just start going straight up. Bitcoin will go straight up. And then those profits flood into alternative coins. So from like 2024 back end, and then if they lower interest rates before the presidential election, that's going to make real estate go through the roof. Assets go through the roof. Everybody will flood out of the US dollar into assets. And then 2024 back end into 2025 is what's called the bull run. But everybody's like, when's the bull run going to end? I'm like, please don't focus on that. Focus on setting exit targets that make you feel comfortable. Get your initial investment out. So you're good. Now like if you walked into a casino and you played roulette, if you put down $1,000 and you win 2,000, pull your 1,000 off the table. Then when you start winning, getting free cocktails, have a few drinks, take some profits off the table. Now, when you lost your money, you actually have your money and you have a little bit of house money on the table. And I do the same thing with crypto. And so I pull profits. And so, because people like they get the greed gene, they think it's going to keep going up, and it doesn't. Like the Dogecoin millionaire, I think he made like 3.5 million. He's a 50,000-aire now.
Yeah.
Like, and he admits that. He's like, I should have pulled profits. He made 3 million in Dogecoin, never pulled profits.
Yeah. This is a principle that I too learned. Luckily, well, I caught the first run that I caught. I did not do this, and then it went, and it was just like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, wow. There's this thing called greed, and it's like, well, I didn't think I had
Yeah.
greed, but I don't know the actual definition of greed. But in my mind, what I learned about investing was that if I don't have a plan, and I'm just
Yes.
hoping
Simple.
for it to go up and up and up and up and up and up and up,
Yep.
that's all it truly is greed, really.
Yes.
Rather than
Yep.
calculated plan. And so the second time when it went up in 2020, I was ready, and it was like
Yeah.
boom, 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 all the way up
Yeah.
until I got
Yep.
completely out. And so I think that you're spot on from an angle of advice, but it's really just applicable to all investments. You should be
All investments.
you should be looking at your business, you should be looking at
Yes.
your real estate, and it should be paying you first. and you should be taking profits
Yes.
off the table so that you can keep things, less risky.
Yes, I tell everybody, I say, "Have an exit plan in everything in life except your relationships."
Ooh,
I've said
yeah.
have an exit plan. So I have an exit plan in all my businesses. I have an exit plan in crypto. I have an exit plan, and then all my exit plans go into insure my wealth. I put my money into insurance, right? And so like I do what the wealthy do. I insure my life and I insure my wealth. So anything I exit goes into my insurance, and then I have the Rockefeller Trust, it's called the waterfall system. So
Mhm.
like I'm all about generational. Like I was like, if I'm drawing a line in the sand like the Grand Canyon, we're not going back. Like, I will make sure when I'm passing that my kids will be wealthy, and there's parameters that I put on that trust, like 50% goes to my kids, 50% goes in the dynasty. I put all kinds of rules on that money. Like, there has to be financial literacy, there's all it's really cool, and that's a neat thing about this where 'cause I feel like we come here to make an impact, and I feel like as I pass, that's a way I can make an impact. As I'm leaving this earth, that I have a Rockefeller Trust set up for 1,000 years, and based on the way it's set up, it replenishes itself over and over and over again, and that gets exciting. It makes investing fun. It's
Yeah.
not just like I'm investing, it's like I'm manifesting for a new life or however this works. I don't know. I believe
Yeah.
in God. I don't know what happens after we die. I'm hoping I go to heaven. But if I do come back, at least I left an impact, or maybe that energy is still here. But so for me, it's getting really fun because it's like, man, I went from broke on my parents' couch to a dynasty Rockefeller Trust. And anybody, why I bring that up is not to brag, is to show people what is possible.
Yeah.
I believe truly that all possibilities exist. You just have to access that field of energy, and you have to put in the work to get there.
Yeah. How could one, I mean, kind of going back maybe over to the spiritual connection side here, but accessing the energy,
Mm.
there's the subconscious training, right? That we kind of already mentioned. We didn't really go into that much, but you know, I mean, we can read Think and Grow Rich. It literally gives a playbook inside of
Yes,
the book
yes,
as far as like you should write this down
yeah,
and read it out loud every single day, morning and night. Like there's some
yes.
pretty basic, practical subconscious training tools out there, including that one.
Yep.
And then as far as like accessing, the spiritual or accessing what you and I would consider maybe our God-given talent or our ability to
Mhm.
connect, is that just a quiet space for you? Is that
Well,
a mixture with a visualization that is kind of, worked through from Napoleon Hill? Like what does that look like for you?
that's beautiful. Yeah. So again, I love G, and it's awesome. The Secret was designed from the Bible, I believe, is a dumbed down version of the Bible. Like the way they said it, like Jesus said, "Take no thought." He says it all the time. He said, "If the eye be signal, your body is filled with light." Right. And what does it mean when your pineal gland, when you close your eyes and you go into darkness? Your pineal gland activates. When your pineal gland activates, that's when the manifestation happens. Your true self, your conversation with God, is when you open your eyes and what you're seeing within your reality. And they've taught us it's outside in, it's actually inside out. That's what manifestation is. Your reticular activating system is a guidance system. So it's your RAS, right? So it's guiding you. So if I have a vision board and I'm writing down my goals, which is an activity I do, and if I'm planting the seeds, then God will do what whatever you believe in, God will do what it needs to do. Sometimes there's a roadblock, just like your GPS. You're cruising along and the GPS says go left. We trust the GPS, but we don't trust God.
Mhm.
Like all of a sudden, a business fall, COVID hits, they shut my business down, right? It's like I just trusted. I'm like, hey, this is your plan. I don't know what. And then all of a sudden, this awakening happened inside of me. So my patterns for me is it's really important when you wake up and when you're going to bed, right? Those first 15 minutes, your brain is in what's called theta. It's a programming state, right? So right when you wake up, what does everybody do? They pick up their phone and look at social.
Yeah.
Right when I wake up, I'll go to the bathroom and then I go right into my visualization. I'm connecting to the field and frequency of all possibilities. So I'm very specific on where I'm going. Like the farm that I live on, my kids each have a house, the ecosystem's taken care of, we're financially free. I'm spending time with people I love and I reverse engineer that. So as I come back into conscious awareness when I open my eyes, then I have to do the activities that align with that feeling and frequency.
Yeah.
That's the decisions that I make, the how I treat my partner, how I treat my family, how I run my businesses, right? And then throughout the day, I'm making sure that the activities I'm doing are in alignment with the goal, right? So there's the mental, then there's the physical part. Faith without works is foolish. But then there's also the moving from, you talked about courage, and I wanted to bring that up, is that the way that our world is designed right now is we're living in force, which creates inactivity, right? So force is greed, anger, jealousy, World War III, all this stuff happening. Well, they push us so deep into that we become inactive or we're hyperactive. We're moving too much and we're trying to justify things by movement. You brought it up in the beginning, which was beautiful. We talked about when we're talking like courage. When you develop courage to go after your dreams, to draw a line in the sand, it's spiritual.
Yeah.
It actually, it doesn't matter what God you believe in, but if you have the courage to speak your truth, be authentic, filled with gratitude and unconditionally loving for yourself and others, you'll ascend into a higher level of energy and frequency. And there's just a big shift in the energy field just recently, and that has to do with war and all those things. And so it's not that one human being is greater than the other. We are all equally important under God's eyes, in my opinion. It's what level of possibility and what energy are you willing to access through the activities you do, but most of all, the thoughts that you have.
Yeah. It's interesting as we, the thoughts and even the meditations, like the obsessions, right? That we have. And going biblical for a second, like I think of the Psalms, I think of David, and I think of him being a man after God's own heart, and how a lot of the time he just spent time with God. And we know this as believers. We know this. But it's like, no, in actuality, he was doing everything that you just described
Mhm.
and creating a connection that allowed him to literally be able to say, should I go after him? And God says yes. Like,
Yes. Well, think about this too. Jesus said when they asked him who is the ruler, he said the devil is the prince of the earth, right? So if that's true, if you believe in what Jesus said, the devil's the prince of the earth, then everything they're doing within the physical world is all the stuff to keep us trapped in action, in force, right? So if you just reverse engineer it and invert it, just like Jesus did, these wise men knew where to go to find this guy, right?
Yeah.
Jesus. He leaves for 18 years, gone for 18 years. He comes back on a donkey wearing Birkenstocks and a sheet around him. So think about that for just a moment. He was so humbled.
right.
Whatever he learned for those 18 years, we won't go into that, but he comes back and he inverts all the teachings, flips it on everybody. He was not religious. He was going from village to village and he was empowering people. He took undisciplined people and made them disciples. He took me and you, broken ass people, drug addicts like me, and he was like, listen, JV, what are you doing to get your shit together?
Yeah.
Who cares what all these other people are doing? You're going in and out of church on Wednesday and Sunday, but your activities don't match your what you're saying you want. I want you to get your shit together. And he picked all these unlikely characters to come together, and their iniquities pissed each other off. And he would get them together, and they would bounce on them, and they had to figure it out, right? And they're like, wait a minute. And then he takes these 12 disciples, and he goes, now you're going to heal people. He's like, now I got stuff to do. You're going to go heal people. We got to do this together. And that's where I think we're in this polarizing moment in America where people are going to wake up to this, man, that we do have the power to stand up, that we do have the power and empowerment, not power over people, but the empowerment within ourselves. Trump coming back isn't going to change my activities and behaviors. I was able to become a millionaire with Biden in office. Everybody's complaining about Biden. I'm not saying I wouldn't rather have another president. I'm not going to get into politics, but what I'm saying is Biden didn't stop me from becoming a millionaire.
That's right.
I was broke on my parents' couch. Biden didn't wake me up in the morning to go do my stuff. Biden didn't take care of my family, but Biden didn't develop my principles. And I truly believe that's what Christ Jesus was saying. Like, get your shit together. Like I say, when I talk to him all the time, I talk to God and God's like, JB, come on, you're slipping, man.
Yeah.
Let's go. It has nothing to do with you or anybody else. Nobody's doing anything to me.
Yeah.
Other than what I'm doing to myself. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent with that, but I just thought about that because he comes back on a donkey, man. And I'm like, humbled. He's like, what are we doing? Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, you're right. That was his message. I mean, it's kingdom come. Like, hey, get ready. Get ready. And
It's
even
here.
before
It's
that, the predecessor before him in John the Baptist. So all of this to say, you've got somebody listening here today who's most likely an entrepreneur, probably a pretty successful one. And they're like, okay, wow, they've talked about a lot here. We've talked about mindset, we've talked about spiritual, we've talked about crypto. Things are kind of shaky right now, especially with the stuff that just happened this past weekend in the war or in the world with potential war, spreading. What does somebody go do after they turn this podcast off to go to the next level in their business, in their life? I mean, first off, I want to give a chance to get in touch with you. So I'll get that in here in a second. But from like a practical, they just click off and then they're going to go, what? What would you say? You got to get this first in order.
Yeah. One thing. So when I coach people, I'm like, hey, principles. What are your principles? What are you going to be defined as? And from there, you build out, first of all, it's principles first. Like, what are your principles? And you have to stand on those principles. You need to spend some time on these. Like when I developed these, I was like, I will not bend. I will not waver. Once I developed my principles, I looked at my life and asked myself, is my life in alignment with my principles? And it wasn't. It was embarrassing. I was like, wow, you say this, JV, you're doing all these TikToks, you're doing all this shit. But if I really look at your life, it's not aligned with these principles. So then you build behaviors and activities that align with your principles. From there, you start to become a visionary. You look and you say, okay, what feeling do you want to create? Like, I always say billion-dollar ecosystem boldly. And I already know what it feels like, what it looks like, touch, feel. And then you go back down. What are the daily activities you need to do to get there? Right. From there as well, as an entrepreneur, for freedom, you have to scale. You have to scale. And that's how people are like, well, how do you get off at two? I scaled my businesses. I scaled all my businesses and I found other amazing human beings. I took them out of force. I brought them into power to believe in themselves and I empowered them. They're never going to do it 100% like I would, but they're not me. And so I brought people who are way better than me and scale because I think for entrepreneurs, it's our baby, right? It's like a child. All my businesses are children, right? But just like a child, you gotta bring them up, you gotta push them out, and you gotta let them go,
That's right.
right? And so I think that's a big. So define your principles, create a vision, backwards engineer into those daily activities. Because entrepreneurs often we get in this like rut. We're doing the same thing over and over again. You have to always assess. Every quarter, me and my team sit down and we assess. Where are we at? What do we need to change? And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? If something's going off, it's usually something, either it could be economic, but it's usually just something you have to like dial in just a little bit, right? So I would say principles, create the big vision, backwards engineer into daily activities, and then have faith, like absolute faith. Like I'm telling you, like moving from faith to knowing, like I know that everything I'm doing today is in alignment with what God wants for me tomorrow. And every night I go to bed, I sleep very well because I'm like, hey, if things aren't going well, and sometimes some businesses are struggling, but it's a wave of energy.
Yeah.
There's something happening within the economy, but I know that I'm doing what I need to do and having known instead of operating in the stress and anxiety, that's not going to get you anywhere. And that goes into energy and vibration. If you know and you trust that everything is taken care of and that you can do all the things you can do to be present, but also faith without works is foolish. So it was a lot, but I hope that that makes
No,
sense.
it's good, man. I just wanted to give them a chance of to not only hear it, but like be able to go do it. But if they want your help doing all of those things that you just said, they
Sure.
obviously need to reach out to you. We're going to put it in the show notes, but give us just a quick,
Cool.
easy way for them to be able to find you and potentially get your help doing this.
Yeah, super grateful. So it's 3T as in Tom, warrioracademy.com, 3T as in Tom, warrioracademy.com. All our information will come up, or Coach JV, like junior varsity. And everything will be on there if you type that in Google. And yeah, we'd be grateful to help anybody, but very grateful to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think that, I mean, first off, the intentionality, the word intentionality, it's been a part of a lot of what I've done and what even Gathering the Kings
Love
has
it.
been and what we're helping other people do. But the practical, how do I go actually be intentional? And I think you've given
Yeah.
so many nuggets on that.
Thank-
So much so to where they should definitely check out your information. We'll put it in the show notes. Like I said, a couple years ago when I first saw you, it was like, oh, okay, this is good. I love the crypto stuff. I love the macroeconomic stuff. I'm always trying to pay attention to the waves things are moving, especially talking about energy. It's like, dude, I'm trying to make sure I'm in the right frequency constantly.
Yes.
And so, all right, man. Well, this has been incredible. I'm sure this relationship is going to only flourish from here, but
Yes.
you have been a blessing to the listeners. Thank you for spending your time and hopefully just creating a frequency with me that is pretty unique. I appreciate you.
I love it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.